the fact that British media, Western media, is so out to like promote and protect Tsai Ing-wen just shows that they don't have any journalistic integrity. They're just like people who want to find any way to like stop China, and like the media is just like it's just an arm of the government. A lot of people are attacking the Western media for like exaggerating things about China and stuff like that. I don't attack the Western media for that, even though I know it's happening. My issue with the Western media is that they promote outright falsehoods about what's happening in Taiwan, possibly because they don't know any better, but also because it's what they want to report. They come here and they see these fake opinion polls and they're just like going, oh, it's all because of the Hong Kong protests. Look at what a good job. Look at all that trouble we caused in Hong Kong. We supported those protesters and blah, blah. And now everyone in Taiwan supports incumbent Tsai Ing-wen.
So since the protests began in Hong Kong earlier this year, President Tsai Ing-wen here has expressed frequent support for the protesters, and as a result, she's seen her support in the polls rise significantly since then. How do you plan to win the support of Taiwanese voters who support the protesters in Hong Kong? And also, what would your solution be to the situation in Hong Kong right now?
In terms of the Hong Kong issue, over the past few months, young people even lost their lives. The Hong Kong competitiveness has decreased, and Hong Kong has not been stable. Is that good or bad for Hong Kong? It's definitely bad for Hong Kong.
Practically all polls show that you're significantly behind President Tsai Ing-wen in the run-up to January's election. What is your path to the presidency now?
现在整个民进党对我个人还有我的家庭是强烈的批判。
Ecstatic scenes for supporters of the woman who stood up to China. Tsai Ing-wen made it clear her thumping victory was a message to Beijing that Taiwanese people won't give in to China's efforts to isolate and marginalise them. Tsai Ing-wen had struggled in the polls for most of her first term, but the Hong Kong protest last year helped to dramatically change her fortunes.
This result is a massive blow for China's leader Xi Jinping, who spent the past 4 years isolating and trying to pressure Tsai Ing-wen's government in the hope that the voters would turf them out. It's hard to believe he could ever peacefully persuade people here that Communist Party rule is better for them.
What does Tsai Ing-wen's victory actually mean for both Taiwan but also China?
It means that the people of Taiwan have spoken and that the policies that Tsai advocates for and more distance from the mainland is something that the Taiwanese actually want. For Beijing, I think this is very frustrating because it's a real clear sign that the people of Taiwan don't elect the kind of government that the party has.
How much of a role is what's happening in Hong Kong, you think? How much of a role did that actually play in what we saw in Taiwan?
That was a campaign ad for Tsai that money can't buy. Taiwanese voters watching what was happening in Hong Kong and watching the dissatisfaction and the chaos that comes in large part from people in Hong Kong not wanting what is called one country, two systems, this sort of semi-autonomy from Beijing. That message to Taiwanese voters is, well, what Tsai is offering in this distance from Beijing is much better for me and for my family and for my children.
They're just like so in awe of everything that's going on in Taiwan, and it's like it's not true. Like basically like it's all been faked, and they don't really care if it's been faked or not. It's what they want to believe.
Taiwan's election results are in, and the real loser is the Chinese Communist Party. Find out how Hong Kong protests played a big role in the elections. Welcome back to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell, coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
So, what would the Chinese Communist Party like to see happen in this election?
I think they want the KMT's candidate, Mr. Han, to win the presidential election. But as far as I know, predicting from where we stand right now is not going to happen.
This extends to like Falun Gong channels like China Uncensored. They came here, they saw what was happening in the rallies. They went to Hungary's rally on January 9th.
And we've actually had to back away from the main rally several hundred feet so that we could even get internet. So while it doesn't look that busy behind us right now, there are tens of thousands of people right over there.
And they're incredibly passionate.
There's a lot of people that have gathered.
Everyone
wants to wave.
Yeah. Again, Chinese democracy.
They went to Taiwan's rally on January 10th, and they didn't make the basic observation that there were way more people at Hungary's rally than Tsai Ing-wen's rally.
Last night we were at the same spot covering the Kuo-yu, the KMT presidential candidate rally. This is now the Democratic Progressive Party rally. You know, it's interesting to see the difference between the two nights. I'd say I can't really gauge how many people there are. Like they said there was like 900,000 people last night.
I think there's some crowd inflation going on
Possibly.
At these rallies. When we were up there earlier, they said there were some 180,000 people here so far, but it's also, you know, we're actually...
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
The people are so different tonight versus last night. Like last night, everyone was waving the ROC flag. They had like weird hats and lots of swag, political swag.
If you're an outsider coming in to report on Taiwan's election process and you see like a rally filled with that many people, like you can't even get close to the presidential office, like very early on in the day, you couldn't even get close to the presidential office because there were so many people at Hungary's rally, then that's the first thing you should report, okay? And they didn't do that.
Yeah, there's maybe a little bit of enthusiasm gap, but actually, from what we were told and like the people we talked to, it seemed like everybody was expecting this rally to be much smaller than yesterday's rally, and it doesn't seem to be that much smaller.
Well, wasn't that because like the Kuo-yu rally yesterday was so big, a lot of people got kind of freaked out and so came out in force?
I was saying that today it just looked like normal people going to a concert or an event. Yesterday it looked like die-hard fans of something. But I would say that like it seems like for this rally a little bit more subdued but not noticeably like sparse crowds.
So I see a couple things going on in these clips. First of all, Shelley's trying to downplay the fact that there are obviously less people by a lot at the Tsai Ing-wen rally on January 10th. And Chris is trying to change the subject to the fact that people are behaving differently at the Hungary rally, like they're crazy or something. Shelley's willing to admit that people at the DPP rally are far more subdued, like they don't care as much. But what she's not equating that to is far less enthusiasm for the Tsai Ing-wen government. They're not really admitting to it, but you can see from these two live broadcasts from China Uncensored that there was far more people and far more enthusiasm at the Hungary rally than the Tsai Ing-wen rally.
那主播各位观众，你可以看到我背后满满全部都是拿着国旗的韩国瑜支持者，但是千万不要以为这是主舞台。如果呢你把镜头往前面看，其实这边呢是在自由广场。好，你可以看到自由广场这边呢，全部是已经挤满、挤爆人潮了。
Okay, these aerial shots show the DPP rally probably at their peak. We see people on Renai Road, Xini Road, and Zhongshan South Road. However, we don't see anyone in Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall. The Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall area is significant because if Zhongshan South Road fills up, that is the area people go to.
现在看到了，自由广场在这儿。我们去看看那边，他们人刚刚大概坐了1/3墙吧，可能都还不到一半。现在去看看人有多少。开始有听到声音了，哎。
我发现蔡总统身为一位女性领导人，她带给女性很多的勇气和力量，让女性愿意生于企业界，并真正成为她成为专业的领导人。
有人在喊韩总统哎。
然而。这次我在加拿大航空的班机回台北，我的目的地台湾， 被加上了中国2个字。我很愤怒，也很担忧。我更害怕下次回家。
现在人比刚刚多一点，对，人比刚刚多一点。
的原因有很多，而我始终深信一件事，那就是不管改变的道路有多漫长，不管路上有多少险阻，都没有人可以阻挡进步的力量。民主并非
这是那个自由广场这边的荧幕，大荧幕，然后就大概
我们漂洋过海回来了。
这些人，
我希望明天1月11日，大家一起站出来，用手选票。
你们要谁？大家还是你们要谁？大家欢迎新北市长侯友宜。各位，咱所有乡亲是大好朋友。
守护我们的家，台湾投给3号
大概这么多人，
拜托，拜托，谢谢大家。各位亲爱的朋友，
对，是真的差好多。
You know, I saw China Uncensored at their after-election meeting, and I was saying like Taiwan is just like it's really sad what's happening in Taiwan. It's just like it just feels like the minority is like bullying the majority. They have 30% of the support in Taiwan, but that 30% has near complete control of Taiwan, and they're allied with the Western media, and they just have their little meetings like in places like that, and they just laugh to themselves, and they're just like so in awe of their power, their ability to fake everything and call it the truth. So the Western media, pro-West YouTubers like ADV China and China Uncensored, they're just looking at the skin of Taiwan, and even if they know better, they're not saying it.
So Korean Fish,
Yeah.
the second guy,
Yeah.
he was winning a lot of hearts and minds with promises of jobs and reigniting the economy, but there were a lot of ties to the mainland being found out.
Of course.
And a lot of KMT people that were in the pockets of the CCP. And guess what? He was on top of polls for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then China's nightmare happened.
Hong Kong.
See, China wanted orange or blue, lesser blue,
Yeah.
to win. They hate English vegetables so much. The last thing they want, right, is Taiwan independence. Then they actually have to put their money where their mouth is and go invade.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So he was poised to win, and then like you said, Hong Kong happened.
Yeah.
And that was the end. As soon as Taiwanese people saw what one party, two systems status quo looks like,
Yeah.
she won by a freaking
Landslide.
landslide.
57%.
Show the next slide.
Sure, let's get there.
Anyway, long story short, she won by a landslide because, and I'm going to attribute this to the absolute ridiculousness of the CCP's meddling in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
You don't want to be part of that system, and I think they've lost Taiwan forever.
Yeah,
For
seriously,
real.
because they just basically demonstrated exactly how they would run a one-party, two systems, a one country, two systems thing, which is poorly. They
Right.
really did not deal with Hong Kong correctly. They could have de-escalated it straight away by removing that stupid extradition bill, but rather they pushed it because they're used to getting their way. In mainland China, if the government says this is how it is, that's how it is, and if anyone challenges them, they get locked up.
So to wrap this up, throughout the year, mainland China's been running articles about, they knew James Song wasn't going to win, but running articles about how Korean Fish, the
Yeah.
Blue Party guy, was winning hearts and minds around, and it's going to improve ties to China. And they were writing so many articles like, absolutely, Tsai Ing-wen is going to lose. They were 100% sure she was going to lose. And here we are again, egg on face.
Yeah,
Freedom prevails.
Now, I'm of the opinion that Winston and Matt of ADV China have no idea that the opinion polls in Taiwan have been faked since June 2019 when the Hong Kong protests began. The entire DPP propaganda machine and the Western media have sold this story that the Hong Kong protests caused the turnaround in the opinion polls for Tsai Ing-wen. It's a completely false story. However, it makes complete sense to them, and that's all they know. They have no idea of what the actual conditions are in Taiwan and what people are actually thinking on the ground. The truth is that people care very little for what is happening in Hong Kong. Tsai Ing-wen has been in office since May 2016, and people have mostly hated her administration for her domestic policies. They weren't going to change their minds over trouble in Hong Kong. It doesn't mean that they liked what they saw in Hong Kong. It just had nothing to do with them. Also, the DPP and the Western media sell this notion that putting the KMT in office would bring in the Chinese Communist Party to Taiwan immediately or very soon through their business ties or whatnot. However, people in Taiwan know that this isn't really true. Ma Ying-jeou of the KMT party was already in power for 8 years and nothing like that happened. Most people can see through this as DPP propaganda and just a scare tactic to get people to support the DPP. So this kind of disinformation that the Hong Kong protests turned around the election for Tsai Ing-wen is very believable to the Western media and these YouTubers that are against the Chinese Communist Party. It makes complete sense to them because it's how they would think. However, they don't understand how people think in Taiwan, how local they are, how not international they are, unlike them who are very international. Therefore, they are using how they think to analyze how people in Taiwan are thinking, and it's coming across as completely incorrect and making them look foolish. This is why when I brought up the possibility of election fraud in the comments, Winston just called me a sore loser and never responded to any of my further comments. Even though I gave video evidence and statistical evidence of election fraud, I got no response from him. For them to even consider that they've been duped that badly by the Tsai Ing-wen administration would be a huge embarrassment to them. Even if it were true, they couldn't care less. They would probably prefer it if the truth just got buried. And they couldn't care less about people in Taiwan being cheated or not having voting rights or lack of freedom of speech on the internet or Tsai Ing-wen turning Taiwan into a police state or issues with freedom of press in Taiwan. They would talk about Apple Daily being shut down in Hong Kong, but they would never talk about CTI being removed from cable television in Taiwan. So my main point about the Western media is that they just use Taiwan to attack the Chinese Communist Party. And they have absolutely no clue what people in Taiwan are actually thinking. But why would they care? It's what they want, because all they care about is bringing down Beijing. It's just like kind of sad how all these falsehoods about Taiwan have to be spread in order to help bring down China in Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party. And it's like everything always has to be about that. Okay, it's not about the people in Taiwan and what they actually need. There's 23 million people in Taiwan, and they're just like tools to utilize to like say, hey, look, these people are on our side, on the Western, the pro-democracy Western side. Look at the election results, and like they've given you China the middle finger, and ha ha ha. All this, like, for people who really understand what's going on, it just makes the West look really bad. It just makes them look really petty. Like why is there this like such a strong effort to promote Tsai Ing-wen and the fake democracy in Taiwan? It's just because of China's economic rise, and they're threatened by it. It's like the West is so like afraid of China like taking their lunch or whatever, so they're just finding any possible way to just like try to stop their rise and stuff like that. And Taiwan is just this, it's a very manipulated place by the Western media and Western nations. So let's take a look at some parts of this Time magazine article. This no doubt helped propel Tsai's resurgence after midterm doldrums that saw her popularity slip to 30 points behind her nationalist rival at one stage. This slide owed a lot to drastic and fiercely unpopular reforms of Taiwan's generous state pension system, which led to disastrous local elections for her DPP in 2018. While this is true, the real reason why Tsai Ing-wen and the DPP lost the 2018 local elections was because they didn't cheat, or they didn't cheat enough. Aside from an economic bounce, Tsai also benefited from the turmoil in boiling Hong Kong, where for 6 months, pro-democracy protesters have agitated for greater democracy. Last January, Xi Jinping proposed the same system of semi-autonomy known as One Country Two System that governs the former British colony as a possible route for reunification for Taiwan. Tsai was swift to rebuff that suggestion, a decision vindicated by the tear gas and rubber bullets that have since engulfed the banking and trading entrepot, boosting her popularity, especially amongst younger Taiwanese. For Shelley Rigger, an East Asia expert at Davidson College in North Carolina and author of Why Taiwan Matters, the Hong Kong protests reminded Taiwan voters, we can't be too complacent, and we don't want to get back to a situation where our leaders are unwilling to stand up to Beijing. So we can see in this Time magazine article that it is citing the Hong Kong protests as one of the main reasons why Tsai was able to bounce back from being way behind in the polls. Of course, we know this isn't true. The Taiwan voters didn't care about the Hong Kong protests, and the election was rigged by 7 million ballots by the Tsai administration. But with so much information in print and on TV and on the internet and from YouTube channels, quoting these reasons as the real reasons why Tsai was able to stay in office, it's no wonder that so many people outside of Taiwan, as well as within Taiwan, believe that these are the real reasons. The DPP really has full support from Western nations to be doing the things that they are doing in Taiwan, okay? And the people don't have the right to vote. They can't vote them out of office because their votes don't count anymore. But they still have to pay taxes. And how is this taxpayer money being used? It's being used to overpay for weapons. The taxpayers have to pay taxes and their votes don't count. That's the situation in Taiwan. And does that matter to anyone in the Western media? Like hell no. They don't care. They just care about their campaign to contain China. The publication Gray Zone, which is like calling out the US for what they're doing, is doing a really great job, exposing things in like Hong Kong, Xinjiang, but they're not paying attention to Western manipulation in Taiwan. And I find that kind of disappointing because there's really a lot of great stories in Taiwan. Taiwan is a really great example of how the West actually doesn't care about freedom and democracy and like truth and justice or anything like that. They just care about their side being stronger than the China side. That all these things can happen in Taiwan is being completely ignored. No Western media will report anything of what's really happening in Taiwan. It's just like we don't care. Like, we only care about what's going on with you when there's an election, and we only care about the result of the election. We don't care how the election was actually held, or there's no investigative reporting to any of these things in Taiwan. And it's just like, be a good little boy and give us the election results we want and give us our money for weapons. Other than that, be glad that you're not under Chinese Communist Party rule. We are guaranteeing the fact that they will stay out of Taiwan, and even though the elections are not real and you don't have freedom of speech, you don't have full freedom of speech anymore. You don't have freedom of press anymore, and we're just going to limit all these things because holding back China is more important than all of those things for you people. I just think more people in Taiwan need to speak up. It shouldn't be just a few YouTubers and like one foreign YouTuber. I don't have any suggestions for what can be done. I know what needs to be done, but I don't think anyone's really capable of really challenging all these things that are being done by the government. Like, people just want to give up. People have just accepted the fact that they don't count. They're placing too much hope in the professors who are going after the PhD case. And it shouldn't just be all on that. More people need to take action in Taiwan. So